As I've become convinced over the last year that there's some kind of systemic risk at work, there's a chance that we've got a dozen Revcos or more buried in the system, and if they Revco, we're going to see an Enron-like collapse.
What are they doing?
Forget I'm from Overstock. It has nothing to do with Overstock. I'm involved in this because I think that there's a systemic risk here.
All right. Well, you're very passionate about it.
I think that this is just the tip of a much bigger scandal that is coming. I want to stop. I think that there is something going on in the American marketplace that has to be stopped. When it comes to light, it's going to be something that makes Enron look like a tea party.
Well, that's a pretty powerful thing to say. I mean, Enron was a $100+ billion company.
This is bigger. Read your own.
Long overdue. I think that we're living at the edge of a 1929 kind of disaster. I'm in the wrong place to say that. I think that we've been living in a house of cards for about 6 years. I think that the American economy is like an old man in an oxygen tent that you flood with oxygen and keep him, but you turn off the oxygen, he fades very quickly. Well, the cheap oxygen in our system has been cheap credit. I think
house of cards?
I think our economy is a house of cards. I guess we're looking at we're on the edge of a global financial meltdown, I believe.
So you're expecting recession in the U.S. and you're calling it a meltdown?
Yes. In fact, I think that the statistics that are coming out from the government now are basically half-truths.
I always judge the market based on what it does. It's a self-evident machine. I don't claim to be any, and if you look at the past 5 years, they have been spectacular. So I find it curious that you don't see that, or that you don't give that more credit.
Well, I give the markets credit in general.
Not just the markets, but the economic prosperity.
Well, I think that prosperity has largely come from we've been writing the checks on the bank account of future people. In one way or another, the Fed and the Treasury have been inflating this economy with cheap credit for about 5 years longer than they should have, and I think it's all going to come to a pretty ugly end.
Look, we got to talk about two.
The real issue here is the United States is like an old man in an oxygen tent that you flood with oxygen and he comes, you think he's okay. Well, if you turn off that oxygen, he's going to fade much quicker than anybody thinks. In our case, the oxygen has been cheap money. I think that there's something just like the mortgage-backed security crisis, and that is basically some banks have been caught selling the same share of stock to 5 different people.
Does that behave?